This is Karl talking management for the Globe Mail. Today I'm delighted to speak to Major General Chris Whitecross, the senior-most female general in the Canadian Armed Forces. This is Karl talking management for the Globe Mail. Today I'm delighted to speak to Major General Chris Whitecross, the senior-most female general in the Canadian Armed Forces. It's a bit more unusual for a young person to choose the military as a career. In the States it's a bit more common. So as a young person, why did you choose to join the military?
Well, my father was military, and his father was in the war, and my uncle was military. So I came from a military family, born in Germany on a military base. Kind of liked that structure. And then when I was in engineering school at Queen's, I really liked the idea of being in charge, to be completely honest. And I liked the structure, the hierarchy that the military gave you. So I wanted to try it for a couple of years. That was 31 years ago.
So what kept you in the military then?
I enjoy it. I enjoy the opportunities it gave me. I enjoy the fact that as a very young officer, I was given autonomy to do a bunch of things with people and money and resources, to learn a trade, to learn leadership, and to do things I would never have been able to do outside of the military.
When did you start thinking of yourself as a leader? Was it in high school or earlier or later on in life? When did you see yourself first as a leader, Chris?
Actually, that's an interesting question, because when I was in high school, I joined the cadet movement. And I was a bandsman, so I didn't really consider myself anything other than a bandsman. But then I started getting involved in other things, and then the cadet instructors would come to me to organize things. And the school instructors, the school teachers would come to me to organize things. And at that time, I was organizing my peers. And then I was realizing that maybe I could do this more and more often, and I was getting engaged at higher and higher levels. So I didn't really... At the time, I didn't really associate that with leadership, but I associated it with being able to manage people and being able to put things together. And then as I joined the military and as I was at university doing the same sorts of things, I realized that I could actually lead people. And then when I was in the military, I put two and two together and realized that this was really what it was called.
One of the common problems for high potential managers is that at a young age you're managing people which are more experienced and quite a bit older in age. So you come out of Queen's, you're a lieutenant right away. How do you handle the problem of managing people that are quite senior to you?
It's not actually a really big problem in the military, because we're brought up in that kind of an environment where the people, as officers, the people that you're leading are always going to be more senior, have more experience and older than you. It's always going to be that way. And their job actually is to teach you to be a better manager, is to teach you to be a better leader, to teach you your technical skills, teach you to be a better engineer for me, because that was my occupation. But to teach me to lead my people, to care for them, what they need, what they don't need, how to be hard, how to be compassionate, when to be hard and compassionate, all those sorts of things. That was their job. So it was good, because you put in young and old together, and then you become a really strong and vibrant team. And as you get older, that's your job. Then you have to bring up the young people. So you're always looking out for those with the experience to bring up the young people to take that. That's the environment within a military structure. I think that's what really sets us apart, I think, from, say, the rest of the public service or the rest of the government or the rest of the civil service.
Well, when you look at the boomers are in that place where they're mentoring younger people because they're just not going to be around forever. What motivates an older person, as we see in the military, to help a younger person, in fact, be promoted over them again and again? What is the motivation for the older person in that context?
I don't think they're ever motivated to promote them to outrank them. I don't think that's part of their psyche. It's to motivate them to be the best that they can be, to treat the soldiers, the sailors, the airmen, and the airwomen with as much respect and as much as of themselves as they can, because ultimately that's what we want to do. Because as leaders, we want to make sure that those that are coming behind us take care of the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces. And to do that, we got to teach them to do that. So it has a side benefit. They come and they beat you, or they beat you in rank or whatever. I mean, that happens. It happens all the time. And we're used to it, so I don't think it really bothers us.
So you've been in the military for over 20 years now. When you look at leadership today versus that time, how has leadership in the military changed over the last 20, 30 years?
You know, it's been 31 years. I know I look a lot younger, thanks. But it's it's interesting because back then I saw what would be termed to be older leaders, and I am one of them now. And I thought the leadership of the day back when I joined in the early 80s to be more of an old style of leadership where, God, Queen of my country sort of thing. Whereas today we tend to be still strong military leaders, but we have a better view of the people skills, a better view of the interpersonal skills and what it takes to take care of our own. It might have been there back then, but I never noticed it. I certainly don't notice it as much as I do now. So that's the big thing that I've noticed in the last 30 years.
Do you see hierarchy being less in the military today than 30 years ago?
No. Hierarchy's still there. It's still there and it's still vibrant. The people coming in today, I find, are different, are a different, not in any disparaging way, but they're different in that they're not what I was back in 1982 when I joined the military. So, whereas I was deathly afraid of senior officers, with a little sense of fear, which is probably healthy back then, I don't get that out of the young today. I get more confidence, more of a worldly understanding than what was back then. But regardless, underpinning all of that is still a hierarchy that exists, that has existed in the last 30 years.
Why do you need that hierarchy?
You need predictability in the military. You need a stated set of rules that people can follow, that they can understand, regardless of what education level that they're at. You need people to understand their left and right arcs, what occupation their left and right arcs, what parameters they work in, okay. What they are allowed and not allowed to do, like their ROEs on deployments, their rules of engagement. We need to keep it at that level so that people can come to work with a set of expectations and can meet those expectations. And as they work up in the ranks, those set of expectations will get larger and larger. But they're learning and they're experiencing. They're getting to that level. So when they are given more and more responsibility and a bigger set of expectations, they have the competencies and they have the skill sets in order to take that on, because they're getting that time and they're getting the experience level to do that.
How do you define leadership? What is leadership? You are one.
I am one. In the simplest frame, it's just getting people to do what you need them to do and hope they enjoy it while they're doing it.
But more importantly is to get it done.
Is to get it done.
And they may not always enjoy that.
No, they may not.
When you look at it, I had this argument with one of the senior leaders on a recent trip. He said, I don't want to know my people, I don't have them over for dinner, I have a task for them to do, and if they have problems, they have to be adults and deal with it. Other people look at leadership as you have to know your people and understand who they are and their families and things like that. Where do you see leadership falling on that continuum?
I'm completely at odds with your friend, because if you don't know your people, if you don't know their family situations, if you don't know what makes them tick, if you don't know what makes them go, what are their motivating factors, how can you inspire them in times of war? How can you inspire them in times of crisis or whatever? How can you not just inspire them, but motivate them to do what needs to be done at a time where they're obviously don't want to do it? They're tired, fatigued, or whatever, angry, upset, depressed. But the job has to get done. I mean, how can you do that if you don't know them?
So when you look at the military, relatively underpaid compared to business at least, what keeps people excited about the military and wanting to be a part of it? What is it that draws them and keeps them there?
I love my job. I love what I do. I love the people I work with. I love serving. I know this sounds a little trite. I love serving my country. I've served in Afghanistan. I've served in Bosnia. They were experiences I would never have been able to experience anywhere else. I serve with veterans. I serve with people that have given I've met families of people that have given the ultimate sacrifice. It's a humbling experience. It's one that I like to share with people in very many ways. To me, it's motivating. It puts me on the same level as anyone else. It's humbling, and I mean I can't say any more than that. it comes from the heart.
When you're looking at Afghanistan, in business we use war metaphors, inappropriately at times, where you actually have sent people to battle and someone may die, would not be an unusual outcome in those circumstances of Afghanistan. How you deal with the fact is you're putting soldiers in harm's way?
Well, as leaders, so we go back to the predictability. We go back to stated aims, knowing your people, knowing their strengths and weaknesses, making sure that you're not asking them to do something, A, that you're not willing to do, and B, that they're not capable of doing. So you're putting all that together, and you can only do that after you know them, you've trained with them, you work with them, you sleep with them, you eat with them, you understand who they are and where they came from. So you have to go through all of that before you can take them out, before you can task them to do anything that you're not willing to do yourself. That's how you do it. And then you make sure that the training that you've given them has given them all the skills that they require. And that you've made the best plan that was available with the best information that you've got in place, so that you've mitigated every risk that you can to keep them out of harm's way.
Well, you've served beside other military, whether from the UK or from the US and elsewhere. Do you see the Canadian military takes a different approach at times than other of our allies?
I think so. I think in many ways, and you can see it in some of the books you read. Certainly in Afghanistan and Bosnia, it was like that. Canadians tend to be, we're more open force. What you see is what you get. We're embracing. We tend to get to know people. We tend to open ourselves up to people, get to know them, get to know their weaknesses and their strengths. Try to embed trust within our friends, the people that we're with, so that we can work with them and find out their strengths and weaknesses just like we would our own people. We know that there are 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes half a dozen ways of doing business, that we're not constrained by only one way, the Canadian way. We are conciliatory in very many ways.
Sounds very Canadian.
Sounds very Canadian.
You've been in circumstances in Afghanistan or in Bosnia where you were in danger. How do you deal with fear and keep moving on and get over it?
There is a moral courage that you get right from your gut that helps put one foot in front of the other and helps you move forward. And it's hard to explain, but it comes from within. And it's instantaneous, and it basically tells you to keep moving. You need to, go to high ground, get out of there, move, get in safety, because that's what you need to do as a leader. You need to show calm, strength, and courage as a leader, because that's what people are hoping to see from you. And then when you're alone, you could probably take a deep breath and let the rest of it come out. But that's how I...
When you look at young officers, do they need to work on strengths and weaknesses both? Or is there time when you say, let's get rid of some weaknesses, but really focus on your strengths?
When I talk to young officers, I say there's a number of things you really need to work at. One of them is identify for you what are your strengths and weaknesses. Really look at them. Then throw your strengths away, because they're there. You know what they are. Work on them, sure, you know what they are. They're going to come through for you in a punch regardless. But look at your weaknesses and figure out what they are and how you can mitigate them. And then look at the people that are around you and figure out how can you mitigate your weakness with somebody else's strength. Because in a punch, if your weakness is going to take the team down, you got to figure out how you're going to be able to get out of that and how you're going to be able to make the best of it. That's what I tell them.
Can you spot the future generals among the lieutenants and captains of today? Can you, with some confidence?
I can spot the groups of future leaders, yes.
What do you mean by groups?
Well, sometimes they kind of walk around in groups. So sometimes you have your academics and your sports, in the normal universities. Sometimes I find in the military environments, they associate themselves in groups. So in some cases, those that are going to be true leaders because they have what it takes or they have that little bit extra, they tend to hang around each other sometimes, and you can spot them. You can spot them individually as well, but sometimes I see them more easily, for sure, when they're walking around in groups.
How do you help the troops deal with when, on occasion, some Canadian citizens are critical of military missions and what we're doing? How do you help the troops deal with that?
Well, the basic premise of being a Canadian is freedom of voice and freedom of speech, and people have a right to say what they believe in. So I tell our troops, I mean, if you hear it, then, listen to what they have to say, and, and take heed. But ultimately, you made the choice to be a military member. You did it for a reason. And, we have a task to do, and let's get on with it.
You've reached quite a senior level as a Major General. What is it about you allowed you to become a Major General? What was it that allowed you to get to that high rank?
It's a really interesting question because I honestly don't know the answer to that. But if I had to answer, I would say because I'm fairly humble. I believe in the teamship that is the military. You don't get to where you are without the people that are with you. I also believe in a whole sense of trust and values. And I seriously believe that it's every member of the military has a right to be there, and every member of the military is important in and of themselves. Doesn't matter what rank they are, and they all are important. That's really where my sense of being is.
Occasionally, you've been singled out for some honor. How do you deal with that? How do you feel inside when you're singled out for an honor?
Humbled. Absolutely humbled.
It's interesting, it was young women that asked me to ask you that. And some of them seem to wrestle as young women with that sense of being special or something.
It is very humbling. And I know that sounds really trite, but it is very humbling. At some point in my life, in my natural life, I really hope the whole first female, first woman, all of that kind of thing isn't really, like when my daughters get to be where I am, I hope we don't talk about it anymore. I really hope that happens. We really are far ahead of most nations in terms of Canadian women in the military. But I'm not naive to think that we're there yet. But when I am giving the first of this or an award or something, I am truly humbled because it's not just me. It's the people that help me get to where I am. It's my team, it's my family, it's my support network, it's my husband, it's my children, it's my friends, it's my colleagues. It's not just me. And I truly humbled the pioneers of the women that were before me and the tremendously talented women that are ahead of me, that are behind me. Sorry, those that are coming up the ranks. They will just mesmerize you.
Do you think it's quite different for those young women than it was for you?
I think in some cases it was a little harder for me at the beginning. There were some obstacles, but the young women coming up now, they're doing things that are a lot harder. They're in combat. They're leading in combat. They are truly veterans of combat. They are living in a completely different environment in some cases.
But thanks to you and a bunch of other women who've kind of been pioneers, should it be easier for them in that sense?
I hope so. And I think the answer is yes. Here's a very small, we have time for the very small story. So I was giving a speech at one of the military colleges, and they asked me, one of the young ladies asked me how my basic training was. So I told her how my basic training was, and then I asked her, I said, so how was your basic training? And she said, I don't know, it was pretty normal. And I said, what a fabulous answer. She didn't realize it at the time, but that's a huge step forward when it was just normal.
Have you seen any gender differences in terms of how men and women may make decisions on occasion?
I think so. I think we think a little differently. I like to think we do anyway. Sometimes I think a little softer. I might think more about the impacts, the soft impacts, more so than my male colleagues at the front. Like eventually, I think they'll come to it.
Yeah.
In terms of how will it affect the people, our personnel, whatever. But in the same frame, they'll think of other aspects before I will. So I think it's a great synergy. But I don't think, frankly, I don't think any two people can think or make decisions the same way.
What can the business learn from the military? What are some of the great strengths of the military that business might be able to learn a trick or two from?
I think there's a couple of areas. One is planning. We in the military are great planners. So there's two types of planning. There's the contingency for the what-if situations, and then there's the planning for the holy crap, we're there situations. And we're very good at that because we grow up in that environment. So we can get into a situation where we can automatically sort of plan on the fly. Yeah. That's one area. It's a very very interesting and area development. I think it's a very interesting skill set. And then the other one is more in terms of taking just disparate groups, a whole bunch of different groups, and bringing them together, and then bringing them together for a common good, common objective, as one team, and then bringing them together so that we can do a single task, whether that's a whole government approach, whether that's working with different nations, whether that's working with different allies, different militaries, or even international organizations or non-government, it doesn't matter. It's just taking different groups of people together, bringing them together for a common good, and then getting on with the mission.
So how do you bring all that diversity together? What are some of the things you've learned about how to bring diverse teams together and make them work effectively?
The first thing is we set up basic principles, basic assumptions of where we are, and then we come to a commonality of agreement on that. In terms of what is the stated aim of where we want to go, and what is the end state of where we want to go. And then if we get agreement on that with everybody there, and then developing a plan to go from A to B is actually quite simple. But it's going through that. It brings buy-in, it brings camaraderie, it brings kinship, it brings people being vocal, whereas they wouldn't be vocal in the past. It allows people to show commonality of purpose where they wouldn't have thought there was before. It allows people to show where they have resources and other people don't, where they can share resources or personnel or thoughts or money or whatever. And as you're bringing that up and as you're putting everything together, realizing that all of these disparate groups are bringing and putting something together that is tangible, and that just makes everybody feel good. And then you carry on, and after you've built that team, you can basically do anything. But that's how we do it. We start with a simple set of assumptions, carry on through discussion on stated aim, and develop an end state, and then carry on an action plan.
When we see Hollywood's depiction of war, there's often a time that the general, the leader, stands up and gives this great speech that inspires the troops. Do you do those once in a while?
Great speak to inspire the troops. I make every now and then I get up and tell a nice joke before we have to go out and do something to get everybody. And then if I find that the morale is slipping a bit, then a motivating talk on where we need to go. I think everybody has to do that every now and then. But in terms of everyday life in the headquarters, or if you're outside of Afghanistan, those things are for Hollywood.
Okay. And when you talk to young people about the Canadian military, why would a young person want to join the Canadian military? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I tell them it's an exciting and dynamic environment. I mean, where else do you get to travel? You see it on the posters, right? But when you get down to the core of it, it's an opportunity to lead people, to do something that's completely out of your comfort zone, The professional development is second to none. I don't think of any other opportunity they'd have in any other occupation that they're in school for. That they're going to be with other people that are going to, they're going to do something that they've never done before, and they may do it in any other part of the world, and some of it's going to be very exciting, and some of it might be dangerous, and we're going to train you up for it, but man, it's going to be quite a ride.
There's no life like it.
There's no life like it.
Why did you want to be a leader? Why do you have to be a leader?
Probably because I'm a type A personality, I don't know.
Do you see yourself as more of an extrovert, more of an introvert? Where on that continuum do you think you are?
I think when I'm at work, I'm an extrovert, and when I'm at home, I'm a little bit of an introvert.
So you have a game face you put on at work.
I do.
So why do you have to put a game face on, particularly as a senior leader like yourself?
I don't think it's a game face. I mean, I put my uniform on, and this is who I am. In fact, I think I'm very honest. Who you got in front of you is exactly who I am. It's just when I'm at home, I don't need to be the general. I don't need to be, the commander at home. I need to be a wife and mother, and a spouse to my husband, and a partner.
So how do you stop yourself from barking orders at the girls?
And my son?
Yes.
Oh, that's not easy. I just have to give them the look.
I think every mother has the look.
They do. It's hard. Actually, it's very hard.
It's different being a mother than being a general.
It is, and sometimes it is hard to park the general or the military at the door when you get home.
And your husband was in the military as well.
He was, yeah.
So how do you, both of you, manage to calm down and just kind of get away from it?
Well, through a lot of discussion and long talks. I mean, my husband got out the day I got back from Bosnia, so it was a decision we made because we believed one of us needed to be at home, and he considered his military experience a job, and I considered mine a career. We considered his a job and mine a career. So the decision was simple. So we didn't want to have the experience of our children knowing sort of who I was in terms of she's the commander, your mom's a general or whatever. We wanted our children to know that your mom helps, she's on some committee or whatever. They didn't need to know anything more than the fact that I was in the military.
In business today, we talk a lot about getting work-life balance because people feel, they're on their BlackBerry all the time. How do you get work-life balance? You have to be away for months at a time. How do you manage to maintain a family life? And every business executive seems to face this. I think you have it on steroids.
It was hard to figure out a work-life balance at the beginning because I was traveling so much, and then children and everything else happened, and then I kept getting promoted, and then they get more responsibility, and then the stress levels went up, and then when Ian got out of the military, it really depressed a whole bunch of the stress levels in the home environment, and that helped out a tremendous amount. And then, I have a very good home life. I think that really helps a lot. A huge support network, when I have to do something, I have the support network that allows me to do that. And when I go home, I can let work be at work. I am not chained to my BlackBerry. I am not chained to my phone.
So you don't check email 24 hours a day?
I do not.
And at home, you don't check email?
I get up at 5:30 in the morning, and I'll check it at about 6:30 as I'm getting on the bus to go to work. And I'll check it, I get home around 7 at night. I'll check it on my way home, and I might check it before bed, but chances are I don't.
How do you manage to leave behind such an important job when you get at home? How do you manage to put that to the side? A lot of us wrestle with that.
In the military, we have what are called CCIRs, Commander's Critical Information Requests. It doesn't matter what it means. So if something really bad happens, somebody's going to call you. And so I know that. If something that really needs somebody really needs to get in touch with me, they're going to call me on a stated list of things that I know that are bad enough that I want you to call me for. So that's a comfort.
And that's a rare thing. It would be rare that they'd call you.
Right. So it's on this list. So it's a death in the branch or whatever. Those sorts of things. So I'm comforted by that. When I was in command, say when I was in command, Joint Task Force North in Yellowknife, it was a little bit less obvious it was a little harder to stay away from the BlackBerry because you were in command. So I'm in a staff job in Ottawa, but when I was in command, you were a little bit more tied to your BlackBerry. But even then, I managed not to do it 24/7 and on weekends, because I basically told my staff, if you really need to get in touch with me, then you need to phone me. Don't send me an email because chances are I won't look at it, until Monday or whatever.
So you just have to trust your subordinates, their judgment, that they'll get a hold of you if they need you, and if they're not calling,
that's right.
They don't need you.
Right.
So if tomorrow you got run over by the proverbial bus,
right.
The armed forces would survive without you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes.